I'm joined in studio by Charles Brewer, the Managing Director of DHL Express. Now, DHL have commissioned a fascinating study that was undertaken by The Economist, speaking about SMEs and international SMEs and their seemingly reluctant attitude to invest in South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
So let's put the study in context. What exactly were you looking at?
Well, so yeah, SMEs I think are an interesting topic for many companies, not just DHL. And I think for Africa, it is more relevant than perhaps other regions. If you look at sort of Africa has many exciting stories and news articles and statistics, but there are some rather challenging environments out there too, in particular unemployment. And if you sort of align that with the relative lack of manufacturing in Africa, it's all very embryonic. It represents something like 5% of GDP vis-a-vis sort of 15, 20, 25% in some markets around the world. You know, the SME plays a really important part because they're the people that are going to create jobs over the next few years and get our unemployment down from 27% down to more normal numbers. So really, really important subject. So we're interested in how we can help them, support them and develop them going forward. So we commissioned a study with The Economist, not the first one I hasten to add, but we commissioned a study to find out what they felt. And there was some very positive stories in there. I mean, 50% of all SMEs recognise that going global is really important for them in terms of sustainability. But equally, there was a rather negative view about Africa. And I suspect, you know, it's very aligned to other reports we see, which is if you're not based in Africa, you probably have a different view to those that are based here already. And in fact, EY produced a attractiveness study just recently. I think it was something like a third of companies that they surveyed also had a negative view of Africa. But again, the picture's very, very different when they spoke to companies that are already here. So not overly surprising given what's read in the news, whether it be Ebola in West Africa through to labour challenges and union issues and electricity issues in South Africa. So not overly surprising that if you're not here, you would perhaps have a different view to those that are here. But there's lots of positives in there too. So contextually, it's all about how we can support the SME to grow globally.
Right. So we're speaking about SMEs investing in Africa or in South Africa, and that's really the challenge because as we've seen from the study and from other reports, global corporations, even governments, are quite involved in investing in the continent.
Yeah, I mean, Africa's now, I think, the second fastest growing region in the world. So, and you look, there's a rise in middle class. There's lots of statistics that are now no longer just talk and rhetoric about sort of Africa rising. As I said earlier on, I think certainly from our perspective, when we travel around Africa, and we're one of the few companies to be represented in every single market, so I get to see SMEs as far afield as Chad through to Ethiopia down to South Africa. So we see, we have a pretty good flavour for what they're saying and what they're feeling, and again, similarly, we see a lot of what's going on in terms of the market around manufacturing. As I said earlier on, the SME is really, really important to Africa's future, and again, I don't think many necessarily realise Africa's growth trajectory is different to, say, what China's was and what Vietnam's is today and what India is today. So it's a very different environment. And as I mentioned earlier on, a lot of that driven by we're not an offshore destination yet. So, the tech companies aren't producing tablets here in their thousands for the rest of the world. So we still import for the majority of cases we import. So as I said earlier, the SME plays a really, really important part. So understanding what they feel is important